The alien princess stood at the edge of the grand balcony, her eyes tracing the endless horizon of twin suns setting over her planet. Her heart thumped violently as she thought about the alliance her parents had arranged. She had been told she would marry a human from a distant colony, a man spoken of as ruthless and unyielding. The stories painted him as cold, indifferent, and dangerous. The thought of facing him filled her with terror, and she could feel the weight of duty pressing down on her slender shoulders. The palace around her was alive with preparation. Servants moved swiftly through the halls, carrying decorations, ceremonial robes, and fragrant flowers that filled the air with a heady scent. But the princess could not focus on any of it. Her mind kept returning to the human, imagining the steely gaze that had earned him the fear of his peers. She had seen his name in reports, his victories in distant conflicts, and his unshakable discipline. She shivered at the thought of standing before him, a stranger from another world, with a reputation that made even her advisors uneasy. Her attendant, a soft-spoken young alien named Lyra, approached hesitantly. "Your Highness, the human will arrive soon. Perhaps it would help if you tried to see him not as a figure of fear, but as a person," she said gently. The princess turned sharply, her large violet eyes wide. "Person, Lyra? He is a conqueror, a soldier of men who have never known our ways. How can I think of him as a person when everything I have heard tells me he is ruthless?" Lyra smiled faintly, though worry lingered in her expression. "Sometimes people are not what the stories say. You might find, if you observe him, that he carries more than just a cold reputation." The princess shook her head. "I cannot help it. My mind is filled with warnings. I see a man of iron, not a man of heart." Hours passed, and the twin suns dipped lower into the horizon. The sky turned a rich blend of crimson and gold, casting long shadows over the palace courtyard. Then, without fanfare, a small convoy of hovercrafts descended, each moving with quiet precision. The princess felt her chest tighten as she knew this must be him, the human whose name had stirred both awe and fear across galaxies. She had been told to stand in the ceremonial hall, draped in silken robes of pale blue and silver that shimmered with threads of light. Her hair, long and flowing like liquid starlight, was adorned with a single crystal ornament that reflected the setting suns. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves, and entered the hall. There, at the far end, she finally saw him. He was not the towering figure of terror she had imagined. His posture was straight and confident, but not aggressive. His eyes, a deep brown, scanned the hall with a measured calm. There was an intensity in him, yes, but it was not the wild, unthinking rage she had feared. He moved with purpose, yet every movement carried a quiet grace. The princess froze for a moment, her mind struggling to reconcile the image she had built from stories with the man before her. He approached slowly, giving her space, and spoke in a calm, even voice that carried across the hall. "I am honored to meet you," he said, his words simple but sincere. Her heart skipped a beat. The voice was not commanding or harsh, but steady, almost soothing. She took a small step forward, feeling an unfamiliar warmth rise within her. I am honored as well," she replied, her voice soft. There was a moment of silence, heavy with expectation, as the attendants and advisors watched carefully. The human did not display arrogance or impatience, nor did he glance around with disdain. Instead, he focused on her, and in that focus, the princess felt a strange reassurance, as if some invisible barrier of fear had begun to dissolve. Over the next days, she observed him closely. He moved among the palace staff with quiet respect, listening to their words, noticing small details that others overlooked. He did not speak down to anyone, nor did he flaunt his strength. When the princess watched him train with the royal guards, he was precise and commanding, but there was a calm in his actions, a discipline that inspired confidence rather than fear. One evening, as the twin moons rose and bathed the palace in silver light, the princess found herself walking along the palace gardens, a place she often retreated to when she needed solitude. She was startled to see the human already there, examining the delicate flowers with careful hands. He looked up at her and gave a small nod. "I hope I am not disturbing you," he said. The princess shook her head. "No, not at all. I often come here to think." He gestured to a nearby bench. "Perhaps I may join you? I promise to be silent if you wish." She hesitated, then nodded. They sat together, the cool night air carrying the scent of blooming night flowers. Neither spoke for a long while, allowing the quiet to settle comfortably between them. Then he spoke again. "I have heard much about your people," he said, "and I have tried to learn what I could before arriving. I wanted to understand you, not just as a princess, but as a person." The princess felt a lump in her throat. No one had ever shown such intent before. Her people respected her for her position, but few had ever tried to see her as an individual. You have gone to great lengths to understand me?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "I believe it is the least one can do when meeting someone so significant to another world. Fear or reputation should not dictate how we treat one another." For the first time, the princess felt a flicker of trust. She had been taught to fear humans, to think of them as unpredictable and harsh. But here was one who approached her with patience, thoughtfulness, and quiet respect. Her terror began to fade, replaced by curiosity and something softer she could not name. In the following weeks, the princess and the human spent more time together. They walked through the palace corridors, exchanged thoughts on culture and history, and even sparred lightly in the training halls. Each encounter revealed more of him than the legends had. He was not ruthless in the way her people had feared. He was disciplined, yes, and decisive, but also fair and capable of kindness. One afternoon, a minor conflict erupted on the outskirts of the city. A group of rogue mercenaries had attempted to steal supplies from the colony, and the palace was momentarily on high alert. The human acted swiftly, organizing the guards and negotiating a resolution that avoided bloodshed. He returned to the palace, calm and composed, explaining each step of his strategy with clarity. A princess watched him in awe. The same man whose reputation had once filled her with dread now seemed a figure of protection and wisdom. She realized that ruthlessness in him was not cruelty, but the ability to act decisively in the face of danger, guided by reason and honor. Late that night, the princess sat by her window, gazing at the stars. She thought of the first time she had seen him, and how fear had clouded her mind. Now she felt a strange gratitude for the journey that had brought them together. Her heart no longer trembled at the thought of their union. Instead, it swelled with anticipation and a budding trust. When the day of the formal wedding arrived, the princess walked down the ceremonial hall with measured grace. She met his eyes, and he smiled, a gentle and reassuring expression that made her pulse quicken. She took his hand, feeling the warmth and strength in it, and for the first time, she understood the truth behind the stories of humans. They were capable of fearsome acts, yes, but also of loyalty, courage, and honor that transcended worlds. The ceremony proceeded, simple and elegant. Words were spoken, promises made, and vows exchanged. The princess looked at him, and he looked at her, and in that silent exchange all her fear melted away. She had faced the unknown and discovered a man whose strength was matched by his compassion, whose reputation had been shaped by misunderstanding and perspective. As the twin suns rose the next morning, casting golden light across the palace, the princess and her human partner stood side by side on the balcony. She realized that fear had only been the beginning of understanding, and understanding had led to respect. Respect, in turn, had blossomed into something deeper, a connection that neither stories nor reputations could define. In his presence, she no longer felt terror, only awe and a quiet joy. The human beside her was no longer a figure of dread, but a companion, a protector, and a partner in a future that neither of their worlds could have predicted. And as they looked out at the horizon together, the princess knew that what she had once feared had become a source of strength, hope, and the first glimmer of love. The story of the alien princess and the human spread quietly through both worlds, not as a tale of fear, but as a lesson of understanding. It reminded her people that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to look beyond it. And it reminded the humans that strength was not measured by ruthlessness alone, but by the capacity to act with wisdom, restraint, and care. Together, they faced the challenges of their worlds, navigating diplomacy, culture, and the occasional threat with a partnership forged in trust and mutual respect. The princess who had once trembled at the thought of marriage now walked confidently beside a man whose presence inspired rather than intimidated. And in that partnership, both found a sense of purpose that neither had anticipated, a bond that bridged galaxies and hearts alike. Years later, when the twin moons rose over the palace, she would often find him in the gardens, quietly tending to the plants or observing the stars. And every time, her heart would swell with the same awe and quiet joy that had Fee.